There's something people don't often talk about: the power of being alone. Society conditions you to believe that your worth depends on who you're with, whether you're in a relationship, married, or surrounded by people. But let me tell you this: living alone, truly standing on your own 2 feet, can beat any relationship you'll ever have if you know how to use it. Because when you live alone, you discover what most people never find: yourself. When you strip away the noise, the constant chatter, the opinions, the compromises, you're left with the raw version of you. And that's where the real growth happens. Living alone forces you to face your strengths, your flaws, your fears, your desires. You don't get to hide behind someone else. You don't get to point fingers or shift responsibility. You own it all. And that ownership, it builds a foundation no one can ever take from you. Here's the truth: most relationships fail because people walk into them empty. They haven't built themselves first. They haven't developed independence. They rely on another person to complete them, to validate them, to give them happiness. That's not love, that's dependency. And dependency always turns into weakness. But when you've lived alone, when you've faced yourself, when you've mastered solitude, you walk into any relationship from a position of strength, not need. Living alone also teaches you boundaries. You learn what you tolerate, what you don't, and how to stand firm in your standards. No one gets to walk over you. No one gets to manipulate you. You no longer fear losing people because you've already proven to yourself that you can thrive without them. That kind of confidence, it's unshakable. And let's talk about freedom. When you live alone, you control your time, your choices, your environment. You don't have to explain why you wake up early, why you grind late, why you don't want to waste time with pointless drama. You create your world, you set your rules. That freedom gives you clarity, and clarity builds power. But here's the best part: when you learn to love living alone, you stop chasing people. You stop begging for attention. You stop clinging to relationships that drain you. You become so grounded in yourself that people either rise to meet your level or they fall away. And trust me, when you're at peace with yourself, you don't lose people, you filter them. So yes, living alone beats any relationship that's built on insecurity, on fear, on neediness. Because solitude is not loneliness, solitude is strength. It's choosing yourself first. It's knowing that whether someone stays or goes, you remain whole. And once you've reached that place, every connection you allow into your life becomes a choice, not a crutch. So don't fear being alone. Fear never knowing who you really are because you were too scared to stand on your own. Build yourself first. Master solitude. And when you do, you won't settle for less because you'll know your worth. When you live alone, you begin a journey most people are too afraid to take, the journey of facing yourself without distractions, excuses, or shields. Solitude is uncomfortable at first because it forces you to confront the very things you've spent years avoiding. You can't run from your fears when there's no one else in the room to talk over them. You can't hide your flaws when there's no partner, no friend, no crowd to drown out the silence. It's just you. And in that space of quiet truth, you find the raw version of yourself, the version that needs to be built, sharpened, and elevated. Living alone strips you of dependency. There is no one to lean on when things go wrong. The bills are yours to pay. The decisions are yours to make. The problems are yours to solve. It may sound heavy, but that responsibility is exactly what transforms you. Responsibility sharpens discipline. When you're the one who decides whether you'll wake up and work out, whether you'll focus on building your career, whether you'll prepare for your future or waste your time, suddenly you realize that your life is in your hands, not anyone else's. And that realization is powerful. Most people go through life leaning on others, relying on relationships to fill their gaps. They never face the emptiness inside themselves, so they mask it with companionship. But when you live alone, there's nowhere to hide. The emptiness reveals itself. At first, it can feel overwhelming. You may feel lonely, restless, or even anxious in the silence. But that is the beginning of growth. Because the moment you sit with those feelings and don't run, you begin to build inner strength. You begin to learn how to enjoy your own company. And once you master that, you become unstoppable. In solitude, you begin to explore who you really are. Without constant noise, you start asking yourself real questions. What do I want from my life? What kind of person do I want to become? What habits are keeping me weak? What values matter to me? These are questions most people never ask because they're too busy being swept away by the expectations of others. But solitude gives you the space to define yourself on your own terms. It allows you to design your life instead of drifting into one designed for you. Think of solitude like a training ground. Every challenge you face alone strengthens a different muscle. When you cook for yourself, you develop self-sufficiency. When you fix problems without asking for constant help, you build resilience. When you make decisions without leaning on others' approval, you develop confidence. And when you spend your nights in silence, building instead of wasting time on meaningless distractions, you cultivate focus. These qualities, once developed, form a foundation that no one can take away from you. The beauty of living alone is that it transforms silence into a mirror. It shows you both your strengths and your weaknesses. Maybe you notice that you procrastinate too much, or that you rely on social media for validation, or that you lack discipline in certain areas. Solitude makes these weaknesses impossible to ignore. And yes, it's uncomfortable. But discomfort is the birthplace of progress. When you see your flaws clearly, you have the power to change them. Without solitude, many people live in denial their entire lives, hiding behind relationships, distractions, and excuses. But you won't, because you'll have seen yourself without the filters. Living alone also deepens self-respect. When you know you can stand on your own, you begin to value yourself differently. You stop tolerating disrespect, manipulation, or games from others. Why? Because you've proven that you don't need anyone to survive. You don't fear losing people anymore. You know that whether someone stays or leaves, you'll still stand. And that kind of self-respect changes the way you carry yourself in the world. People notice. They can sense that strength. They can feel that independence. And it commands respect. Another hidden gift of solitude is creativity. Without constant chatter and noise, your mind finally has the space to think clearly. Ideas flow when you're alone. You discover passions you didn't know you had. You read more, learn more, create more. This is why so many of the most powerful, influential people in history valued solitude. They knew it was the birthplace of vision. Greatness doesn't grow in crowds. It grows in silence, in focus, in the hours where no one else is watching. But here's the most profound lessons. Living alone teaches you to enjoy your own company. And that changes everything. When you learn to love your own presence, you'll never again feel desperate for attention or cling to toxic relationships. You'll stop begging for love because you already give it to yourself. You'll stop chasing approval because you've already validated your own worth. And once you reach that point, you don't just survive solitude, you thrive in it. This is why solitude beats any relationship that's built on neediness or fear. Because when you've mastered living alone, you no longer settle for half love, for disrespect, for mediocrity. You don't choose relationships to fill a void. You choose them because they add value to a life that's already full. That shift changes the entire game. Instead of clinging to people, you attract them. Instead of tolerating less, you demand more. And instead of fearing solitude, you embrace it as your foundation of strength. So when you live alone, don't see it as loneliness. See it as training. See it as the place where you build self-mastery. The place where you sharpen every tool you'll need in life. Because the truth is this: if you can conquer yourself in solitude, there's nothing and no one you won't be able to handle when the world comes knocking. Most people walk into relationships hoping that another person will fix them. They hope love will heal their insecurities, fill the emptiness inside, or give them a sense of direction they've never had. But here's the hard truth: no relationship can give you what you don't already have. If you haven't built independence, you'll always be dependent. And dependency destroys not only your strength, but also the very connection you think you're protecting. That's why living alone is one of the most powerful ways to destroy dependency. It forces you to build yourself before you share yourself. When you live alone, there is no safety net. You're responsible for your rent, your bills, your schedule, your health, your time. There's no partner to remind you, no one to pick up the slack, no one to bail you out. At first, it feels like pressure, but soon it becomes freedom, because the moment you realize that you can handle your life without leaning on anyone else, something changes inside you. You stop living in fear of being abandoned. You stop worrying about who will take care of you. You already know you can take care of yourself, and that inner security is priceless. Think about the way many relationships function. One person leans too heavily on the other, expecting them to always be the provider, the motivator, the emotional support system. Over time, that weight becomes exhausting. Dependency doesn't look like love, it looks like pressure. And pressure breaks even the strongest bonds. But when you've lived alone and learned independence, you don't walk into relationships with your hands out, you walk in with your hands full. You don't need someone to complete you, you choose someone to complement you. That difference is the line between healthy love and toxic attachment. Independence also shifts the way you see rejection. When you're dependent, the thought of losing someone feels like the end of the world. You cling, you beg, you tolerate things you shouldn't, because the idea of being alone terrifies you. But when you've already lived alone, when you've thrived in solitude, you don't fear rejection anymore. You know that losing someone won't destroy you. It will simply return you to a state you've already mastered. And that kind of confidence makes you unshakable. It frees you to demand respect, to set boundaries, and to never accept less than you deserve. Living alone also destroys emotional dependency. So many people rely on relationships to give them a sense of worth. They wait for compliments, affection, or validation from someone else to feel good about themselves. But when you're by yourself, you learn how to create that validation from within. You learn to enjoy your own company, to celebrate your own progress, to appreciate your own strengths. And once you do that, you stop looking for constant approval outside of yourself. You walk taller, you speak with more authority, and you live from a place of self-assurance. Independence doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean you push people away or refuse to connect. It means that you're whole before you connect. It means that you don't use people as crutches, and you don't let them use you as one either. Instead of building a relationship out of fear of being alone, you build one out of mutual choice. That's the kind of relationship that lasts. The one where two strong, independent people come together, not because they need each other, but because they value each other. Another thing solitude does is teach you problem solving. When you live alone, every obstacle that shows up is yours to face. Whether it's fixing something that's broken, managing your finances, or pushing through a bad day, you don't have the option to hand the problem to someone else. You deal with it, and every time you do, your resilience grows. That resilience turns into confidence, and that confidence destroys dependency. You stop looking for someone else to rescue you because you know you can rescue yourself. This independence also carries over into your ambitions. Many people sacrifice their goals for the sake of keeping a relationship comfortable. They compromise too early, give up opportunities, or shrink themselves to keep someone else happy. But when you've lived alone and built independence, you know how to prioritize your own growth. You don't abandon your dreams to keep someone. You pursue them with even more fire, because you've proven you can carry yourself forward without needing anyone's permission. And let's be honest, independence is attractive. People are drawn to those who are self-sufficient, who don't cling, who don't beg, who don't crumble without attention. When you stand strong on your own, you naturally command respect. You don't chase love, you attract it. You don't compete for attention, you embody the kind of energy people want to be around. And that only happens when you've destroyed dependency by proving to yourself that you can thrive alone. The irony is this: once you no longer need people, you actually build stronger relationships. Why? Because the fear of losing them doesn't control you anymore. You stop playing games. You stop tolerating disrespect. You stop holding back your truth out of fear. You bring your full, authentic self into every interaction. And because you're independent, you can walk away from anything that doesn't honor you. That freedom creates relationships rooted in respect, not desperation. Living alone teaches you that love is a choice, not a necessity. It shows you that you're not defined by who stays or who leaves, but by the person you've built yourself into. And once you've destroyed dependency, you'll never again enter a relationship from weakness. You'll enter it from strength. You'll never settle for half love, because you know what it feels like to stand whole on your own, and that kind of strength makes you unstoppable, both in life and in love. When you spend time alone, you start to see just how important boundaries really are. Boundaries aren't walls you build to keep people out, they're lines you draw to protect your peace, your values, and your energy. But most people never develop strong boundaries because they're terrified of being alone. They compromise too quickly, say yes when they want to say no, and let people walk all over them because deep down they're afraid that standing up for themselves will leave them isolated. That fear of solitude makes them weak. Yet, when you've already lived alone and learned to thrive in solitude, you no longer fear what others fear. You know you can stand on your own, and that makes your boundaries unshakable. When you live alone, you become the decision maker for every aspect of your life. There's no one else to blame if things go wrong, and no one to take credit if they go right. You own your time, your habits, your choices. That ownership forces you to look at what you allow into your world and what you keep out. You realize that if something disrupts your peace, it's on you to remove it. That mindset builds boundaries naturally because you begin to protect yourself the same way you'd protect anything valuable. And the more you practice, the more confident you become in enforcing those boundaries. The beauty of solitude is that it teaches you the difference between loneliness and peace. Most people confuse the two. They let toxic people into their lives because they'd rather have company than face silence. But when you've learned to enjoy your own company, silence doesn't scare you anymore. It becomes your sanctuary. And once you've found peace within yourself, you refuse to let anyone disturb it. That's where your strength comes from. You're no longer willing to pay the price of your peace just to keep someone around. Boundaries aren't just about keeping people out, they're about teaching people how to treat you. When you know your worth, you no longer tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or neglect. If someone lies, you call it out. If someone disrespects your time, you let them know it's unacceptable. And if someone continues to cross your lines, you walk away without hesitation. That's not arrogance, it's self-respect. And self-respect is only possible when you're not afraid of standing alone. Living alone also makes you recognize what drains you and what fuels you. You notice how you feel after certain conversations, certain environments, certain interactions. When you're always surrounded by people, it's easy to ignore those subtle feelings. But in solitude, you become hyper-aware of your energy. You see clearly who lifts you higher and who pulls you down. That awareness sharpens your boundaries because you no longer guess. You know which people are worth your time and which ones are stealing it. And you stop apologizing for protecting yourself. Strong boundaries also change the way you handle relationships. Instead of clinging to people out of fear, you engage with them from a place of choice. You don't say yes to every demand, every favor, every expectation. You measure whether it aligns with your values and your priorities. If it doesn't, you have the courage to say no. And that no is powerful because it shows you're not willing to betray yourself to please others. It shows that you honor your own needs, your own goals, and your own peace above someone else's temporary approval. And here's the truth, people respect those who respect themselves. They may not like your boundaries, but they will respect them. Weak boundaries invite mistreatment. People push as far as you allow them to. If you let someone walk over you once, they'll do it again. But if you make it clear that disrespect is unacceptable, that manipulation won't work, and that your time is valuable, people adjust their behavior, or they disappear. Either way, you win. You either keep people who respect you, or you lose people who never truly valued you in the first place. Living alone makes it easier to enforce these boundaries because you don't fear the consequences. You're not scared of someone leaving because you've already proven you can thrive without anyone. That kind of independence frees you. It makes your yes powerful and your no unshakable. It puts you in control of your relationships instead of being controlled by them. And once you reach that level, you stop living for approval. You start living for truth. The deeper lesson in all of this is that boundaries are a form of self-love. They are you telling the world, I know my worth and I won't accept less. Without solitude, many people never discover that worth. They live their entire lives bending, breaking, and shrinking themselves just to avoid being alone. But you don't, because you've already faced solitude and found strength in it. You've built a relationship with yourself so strong that no one can shake it. And from that place, you create relationships that are healthier, stronger, and more respectful. Because you no longer trade your dignity for company. That is why solitude is so powerful. It teaches you that peace is priceless, and once you know that, your boundaries become non-negotiable. You stop fearing the loss of others, and you start fearing the loss of yourself. And when protecting your peace becomes your priority, you naturally attract people who respect it. Those who don't fall away. But instead of seeing that as a loss, you see it as clarity, because solitude has already taught you the truth. You are enough on your own, and no one is worth sacrificing that for. Living alone gives you a kind of freedom most people never experience, and with that freedom comes power. When you're by yourself, you're not constantly negotiating your time, your energy, or your goals with someone else's expectations. You wake up in the morning and the day is yours. You decide what you'll do, how you'll spend your hours, and what kind of future you're building. That level of autonomy is rare, and once you experience it, you realize how much power you've been giving away when you live your life for others. Freedom means clarity. When you're not entangled in the noise of other people's demands, you begin to hear your own voice more clearly. You start to notice what matters to you, not what's been imposed on you. Most people go through life chasing things that don't even belong to them. Expectations from society, family, or a partner. They get stuck in cycles of living for others without ever questioning whether it makes them happy. But when you're alone, you're forced to ask those questions. What do I want to achieve? Where do I want to go? What kind of life feels meaningful to me? That clarity is the beginning of power, because power always starts with direction. The freedom of living alone also allows you to build discipline without distraction. You're not pulled into arguments, compromises, or wasted time trying to explain your choices. You don't need approval to follow your vision. If you decide to work late, you work late. If you decide to wake up early and push yourself, you do it. You control your environment in a way most people can't. And the more control you have over your environment, the more control you have over your life. Freedom is not about doing whatever feels good in the moment. It's about creating space where you can build the structure that will take you where you want to go. With that kind of freedom, you begin to realize how precious your time is. When you live alone, you see clearly how every choice adds up. There's no one to distract you from that truth. If you waste your evenings scrolling on your phone, no one else is responsible. If you choose to learn, grow, and invest in yourself, the benefits are yours alone. That awareness makes you treat time differently. You stop letting it slip through your fingers. You start guarding it like the resource it is. And when you master your time, you master your future. Another powerful aspect of freedom is the ability to choose your circle wisely. When you're comfortable living alone, you stop keeping people around just for the sake of company. You no longer tolerate toxic energy, drama, or people who drain you. You don't need them, so you don't settle. Instead, you filter. You only allow people into your space who bring value, respect, and positivity. And because you already know how to enjoy solitude, you don't compromise your peace just to avoid being alone. That choice changes everything about the quality of your relationships. Freedom also fuels creativity. Without the constant noise of others, your mind opens up. You have room to think, to dream, to plan. Ideas flow because you're not drowning in external opinions. Some of the greatest thinkers, leaders, and creators in history understood the value of solitude for this very reason. It's in quiet freedom that visions are born. It's in the absence of distraction that you can see the bigger picture for your life. And once you see it, you can build it without asking for permission. Living alone also frees you from emotional dependency. You no longer look to others for constant reassurance or direction. Instead, you create your own standards, your own validation. You don't need someone to tell you you're enough, because you already know it. You've proven to yourself, through independence, that you can carry your own weight. That kind of freedom in your mindset is powerful because it removes fear. You don't fear being abandoned. You don't fear rejection. You don't fear walking away from situations that don't serve you. And without fear holding you back, you live bolder and stronger. The truth is, freedom and power are linked. When you live alone, you learn how to rely on yourself. You learn that you don't need permission to chase your goals or to protect your peace. You stop asking, will this upset someone? And start asking, does this align with who I am? That shift in focus changes your entire trajectory. It gives you ownership of your life in a way dependency never can. And once you've tasted that ownership, you won't give it up easily. But freedom doesn't mean you cut yourself off from people. It means you connect differently. Instead of clinging to relationships out of need, you choose them out of alignment. You don't settle for half-hearted love or shallow friendships because you know your life is already full. You don't need someone to fill a void. You invite people in only if they add value, and that makes your relationships healthier and more authentic. Freedom sharpens your standards, and your standards shape the quality of your life. What most people don't realize is that true freedom brings peace. When you're not trapped by dependency or controlled by others' expectations, your mind is calmer. You're not constantly anxious about losing someone or failing to meet their standards. You're not worried about fitting into a mold. You live on your own terms, and that peace becomes the foundation of your strength. Because when you're at peace, you can move with clarity, make sharper decisions, and walk through life with purpose. This is why the freedom of living alone creates power. It's not about escaping relationships or avoiding people. It's about building yourself in such a way that your life is yours before it belongs to anyone else. It's about choosing instead of settling, leading instead of following, and building instead of drifting. When you understand that your freedom is your greatest asset, you guard it, protect it, and use it to elevate every part of your existence. That's the kind of power solitude gives you, the kind that no one can hand you and no one can take away. When you learn to live alone and become truly self-reliant, something profound happens. You stop chasing people. You stop bending yourself just to keep them. You stop clinging to relationships that don't serve you. Instead, you begin to attract the right people into your life naturally, because your independence and self-sufficiency create a kind of energy that cannot be ignored. You radiate confidence, clarity, and strength. And people who are insecure, manipulative, or toxic can't survive in that environment. They either fall away or they rise to meet your level. That's the beauty of self-reliance. It filters your world for you. Think about what happens when someone is desperate for attention or love. They accept less than they deserve. They ignore red flags. They tolerate disrespect because the thought of being alone scares them more than being mistreated. That desperation attracts the wrong kind of people, those who exploit, manipulate, and take without giving. But when you've mastered solitude, you don't operate from desperation. You're not afraid of being alone, so you don't cling to people who don't add value. You know you can survive and thrive on your own, which means anyone who enters your life must elevate it. This shift changes the way you engage with relationships entirely. Instead of approaching people from a place of need, you approach them from a place of abundance. You're not looking for someone to fill your emptiness. You're already full. And when you're already full, the relationships you form are built on choice, not dependency. You don't ask, will they complete me? You ask, do they compliment me? That difference is everything. It turns relationships into partnerships instead of transactions. Self-reliance also creates a higher standard for who you allow in your life. Because you know your worth, you stop tolerating half-love, broken promises, or one-sided effort. You've proven to yourself that you don't need anyone to stand strong, so you're not impressed by bare minimums. You expect respect, consistency, and effort. And the amazing thing is, the moment you start expecting more, you actually receive more. Why? Because people can sense your standards. They feel the strength in your presence. They know you won't accept anything less than real, so only the real ones stay. Another benefit of self-reliance is that it eliminates fear from your connections. When you depend on others for your happiness, you're always afraid of losing them. That fear makes you compromise, settle, or silence yourself just to keep the peace. But when you're independent, you don't fear loss anymore. If someone leaves, you'll still be standing. If someone walks away, your life doesn't collapse. You've already proven to yourself that you can build, survive, and thrive without them. And when fear is gone, authenticity replaces it. You can show up fully, honestly, and unapologetically in your relationships. You're not performing to keep someone, you're being yourself, and that's what attracts the right people. Self-reliance also allows you to inspire others. When people see that you're strong on your own, that you don't settle, that you're disciplined and independent, they either rise to meet your example or remove themselves from your life. Weak people who feed on dependency will drift away. But strong, grounded individuals will be drawn to you because strength recognizes strength. In this way, independence doesn't isolate you. It connects you to better people. Living alone and mastering independence also gives you the power to choose quality over quantity. You don't need a crowd around you to feel validated. You don't need endless attention or shallow connections. You'd rather have one person who truly respects you than 10 who only pretend to. That mindset is rare, but it's powerful because it frees you from chasing numbers, likes, or superficial approval. It shifts your focus to depth, and depth always creates richer, more fulfilling relationships. Self-reliance also changes your energy. When you no longer rely on others for survival, validation, or happiness, you walk differently. You speak with authority. You carry yourself with quiet confidence. That energy is magnetic. People want to be around those who are grounded and secure. They trust you more, they respect you more, and they see you as someone who doesn't bend under pressure. And because you're not desperate to hold on to anyone, you give people the freedom to be themselves too. That balance creates healthier, more authentic connections. But perhaps the most powerful outcome of self-reliance is that it gives you the courage to wait. You don't rush into relationships out of fear or impatience. You don't settle just because you're lonely. You're willing to wait for the right people because you're already content on your own. That patience is rare, but it saves you from heartbreak, from wasted years, and from the pain of trying to fix people who were never meant to be in your life. When you're self-reliant, you don't chase, you attract. You don't beg, you choose. And because of that, you end up with relationships that are worth keeping. Self-reliance doesn't mean you close yourself off from love or connection. It means you build such a strong foundation within yourself that no one can shake it. You're not looking for a rescuer, a caretaker, or a source of validation. You're looking for equals, for partners, not providers. And that mindset transforms not only the kind of people you attract, but also the quality of your life as a whole. You stop living for others and start living for yourself. And from that place of strength, you create connections that are genuine, mutual, and lasting. So when you master solitude and become self-reliant, you'll see your relationships transform. The wrong people will fade, the right ones will remain, and you'll never again settle for less than you deserve. Because self-reliance teaches you the most powerful truth. You are already whole, already strong, already enough. Anyone who enters your life after that is not there to complete you. They're there to walk alongside you. And that is why living alone and mastering independence doesn't isolate you. It elevates every connection you'll ever have.